After 70, most people regret these 5 things. You know what surprises people the most after turning 70? It's not the aches. It's not the slower mornings. It's the regrets. And not the loud ones, like lost fortunes or missed careers. It's the quiet ones, the words you didn't say, the risks you didn't take, the life you were too cautious to live. I've spoken with dozens of people in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s. And when you really listen, patterns start to appear. The same 5 regrets keep rising to the surface. And today, I want to walk you through them. Gently, honestly, and without shame. If this is your first time here, welcome to Nonstop Wisdom. This is a space where we speak truthfully about aging, purpose, faith, and everything in between. If you're over 60 or love someone who is, subscribe and stick around. You're not alone in this journey, and it's not too late to live fully. Regret number 1, waiting too long to forgive. You'd be surprised how many people carry old wounds into their 70s. Family fallouts, friendships that ended badly, words that cut deep and were never followed by an apology. One woman told me, "I haven't spoken to my sister in 12 years, and I can't even remember what the fight was about anymore." She was 78. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled when she said it. Not from age, but from everything left unsaid. It started, she said, with something small. A birthday call that came a day late. A misunderstood tone during a difficult season. A disagreement about who was supposed to show up and who didn't. They both let pride do the talking. Both said, "She should call me first." And year after year, the silence grew teeth. It became this quiet wall neither one wanted to climb. Until one day, it wasn't just about the fight anymore. It was about the years they lost because of it. She showed me an old photo, 2 little girls in matching dresses. That's us. We were best friends before we were sisters. Her eyes watered, and she said, "Now I don't even know if she's alive." That's what time does if we're not careful. It doesn't just take away birthdays and holidays. It takes away the chance to make things right. And when the anger fades, all that's left is the silence and a story with no ending. That's the cruel thing about time. It doesn't erase pain. It just buries it under years of distractions, routines, and reasons. Until one day you're too tired to dig it back up, or too scared to admit it still hurts. But your heart knows. Even if your memory's gotten fuzzy, even if you can't recall the exact words that were said, your heart remembers how heavy that silence felt, how sharp that last look was, how long you've carried it. And forgiveness? It's not always about picking up the phone and pretending nothing happened. It doesn't always end with a hug or a reunion. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. It means you stop letting that one moment own the rest of your life. It means you choose peace over pride. Not because they earned it, but because your heart can't afford to keep bleeding quietly. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. People regret waiting too long to say, "I forgive you," or even harder, "I'm sorry," because by the time you're finally ready, sometimes the other person's gone, or worse, you are. And here's the part no one tells you. That regret, it doesn't come loud. It whispers at night, in old photographs, in birthdays that go uncelebrated, in the way your chest tightens when you pass their old street. So if someone's name popped into your head just now, don't ignore it. That might be your soul asking for release, your heart begging for peace. And at 70, 75, 80, peace is better than pride. Always has been, always will be. Advice: If it still weighs on your heart, it means it still matters. And if it still matters, it's not too late. Reach out. Write the letter. Make the call, even if your voice shakes. Not for closure, not for a perfect ending, but for the chance to set yourself free from the burden of what if. Even if they don't respond, you'll know you did your part. And sometimes, peace doesn't come from being forgiven. It comes from knowing you finally let go. Regret number 2, choosing safety over purpose. You spend decades making the safe choice. You take the stable job. You stay in the relationship that looks good on paper. You bury that wild dream under a pile of maybe one day. You think there will be time later, when the kids are grown, when the mortgage is paid, when retirement comes around. But here's what no one tells you. Purpose doesn't wait patiently in the attic. It fades. And by the time you come looking for it again, it's quiet. Harder to hear. I met a man once. He used to sketch airplanes when he was a boy. Not just doodles either. Detailed, imaginative things. Wings that curved like poetry. Engines he invented in his mind. He wanted to be a designer. Said it out loud when he was young. But then life happened. His dad got sick. His mother needed help. There wasn't time or money for art school. So he became a plumber. And let me be clear, he wasn't bitter about that. He was proud of his work. Showed me pictures of houses he helped build from the ground up. Told me about unclogging pipes at midnight in the middle of winter. Called it real work. And he was right. He raised 3 kids, put food on the table, paid off the house by 58, retired at 66. By all accounts, he did everything right. But on his 74th birthday, I asked him, if you had one more life, what would you do? He didn't hesitate, he didn't smile, he didn't even blink. He said, I'd draw every day, and I wouldn't ask anyone's permission. It wasn't said with anger. There was no drama in his voice. Just this quiet ache, like someone who had lived a good life, but not the life that was meant for him. And I think about that often, because it wasn't that plumbing was wrong. It was that his soul was wired for something else. And somewhere along the way, he stopped listening to that part of himself. We do that, don't we? We play it safe. We convince ourselves that purpose is a luxury. Something you only chase if you have the time, the talent, the approval. But here's what I've learned watching people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Purpose isn't optional. It's oxygen. And the moment you stop breathing it in, part of you starts to fade. Safety isn't bad. Let's be honest. Most of us were raised to chase it. A steady job, a roof that doesn't leak, a life without too many surprises. And there's nothing wrong with that. Safety brings structure. It helps you survive. But safety without purpose, that's something else entirely. That's how people end up in retirement homes feeling hollow. That's how a man can have a full fridge, a paid-off house, and still wake up wondering, is this really it? You see, survival isn't the same as satisfaction, and structure isn't the same as soul. You can do everything right on paper, check all the boxes, and still feel like you're watching your own life from the outside. Like a stranger who moved into your body and just kept showing up out of habit. And the longer you live like that, the harder it becomes to even remember what used to make you come alive. Advice. If something inside you still stirs when you think about what could have been, that's not regret. It's your purpose still breathing. You don't need to quit your life or start over. You just need to make room for what matters. Again. Write the poem. Plant the garden. Teach the class. Pick up the paintbrush. Start the story. Play the piano. Even if your hands shake, even if no one claps. Do it anyway. Because purpose isn't about success. It's about doing the thing your soul was made to do. Before you run out of time. Regret number 3. Not saying what needed to be said. It's strange how the things we don't say echo louder than the ones we do. You think you'll get around to it. You tell yourself there's time. You wait for the perfect moment to say, I love you, or I forgive you, or even just, I'm proud of you. But time has a funny way of running out while you're waiting. And it's usually not the dramatic stuff that haunts people. It's the simple lines left unsaid. The ones that would have only taken a few seconds, but now sit like bricks in the chest. You remember the great Sir Winston Churchill? Strong voice, iron will, the man who stood tall during one of history's darkest hours. He was the kind of person people thought of as larger than life, gave speeches that moved nations, made decisions that shifted the course of the world. But near the end of his life, someone asked him a question. Do you have any regrets? Now you'd expect a man like Churchill to say something about the war, maybe a political strategy gone wrong, or a decision that kept him up at night. But no, his answer wasn't about history or headlines. He simply said, I wish I had spent more time telling the people I loved how much I loved them. Isn't that something? A man who held the weight of a world war on his shoulders regretted not saying 3 simple words more often. Not I win, not I was right, just I love you. That's the thing about life. It's not the battles or the speeches that keep us up at night. It's the silences, the moments we stayed quiet when we should have spoken from the heart. You see, when the dust settles on a lifetime, it's not what you built or earned that echoes. It's what you said or didn't. It's the thank you kept meaning to say. The I'm proud of you that got caught in your throat. The I love you thought they already knew. And here's the truth I've learned after watching so many people cross into their final chapters. Nobody regrets saying too much love, but nearly everyone regrets holding it back. So don't wait for the right time, because the right time is usually a lie the heart tells itself out of fear. Speak while you still can, because once you can't, those unsaid words will become ghosts, haunting birthdays, empty chairs, and silent rooms. Advice: don't wait for the perfect moment. It rarely comes, and when it does, it's usually already too late. Call the person, write the letter, leave the voice message if your voice shakes too much to say it out loud. Say thank you. Say I love you. Say I was wrong, or I forgive you, or I'm proud of you. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that words left unspoken don't disappear. They echo. And the older you get, the more peace you'll find in knowing you said what needed to be said while you still had the chance. Regret number 4, neglecting their health when they had the chance. When you're young, you treat your body like it'll bounce back from anything. Fast food, sleepless nights, stress that never lets up. And somewhere along the line, that becomes the norm. You ignore the small signals, the stiffness in the knees, the headaches you explain away, the tight chest you chalk up to a bad week. You keep pushing. You keep saying, next month I'll start. Next year I'll finally join the gym. After this busy season, I'll cook healthier meals, get more sleep, drink more water. And the dangerous thing is, your body goes along with it. For a while, it adjusts, it copes, it covers for you. But here's what no one tells you. There's a line you can't see until you've already crossed it. One day, your knees don't recover. One morning, the weight won't come off. One checkup turns into a diagnosis, and suddenly, later becomes too late. I've heard it over and over again, not from people in their 40s or 50s, but from men and women in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, all saying the same thing. I wish I had taken it seriously before it became a fight. I sat with a man once, mid-70s, smart as ever, but tired in a way that didn't show in his face, only in his voice. He told me about his routine: 6 pills every morning, 2 for blood pressure, 1 for cholesterol, a handful more to keep things from getting worse. He said it like it was normal, and maybe for him it was. But then he looked at me, quiet, steady, and said, all I had to do was walk. 30 minutes a day. That's it. I wasn't overweight. I didn't smoke. I just sat. For years. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't blaming anyone. He just looked tired of fixing what could have been prevented. And then he said something I'll never forget. The price of doing nothing doesn't show up on the first day, but it always comes. That one sentence has stayed with me ever since, because that's how regret works with your health. Not in loud alarms, but in quiet consequences. The ones that show up slow, but stay forever. That conversation made me realize something. Most people don't ruin their health in one big decision. They lose it in tiny, quiet ways. By choosing convenience over movement, comfort over discipline, silence over checkups. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because they're busy, tired, distracted. Until one day their body finally says, I can't carry this anymore. And here's the hardest part to hear. By the time your body starts screaming, the damage is already whispering. You just didn't notice, or didn't want to. But if you're hearing this now, then it means you still have time. Not to be perfect, but to be better. And that's where the real healing begins. Advice: start small. Don't wait for a perfect plan, just take the next gentle step. Walk for 10 minutes today. Drink water before coffee. Eat one thing that grew from the ground. Not to chase youth, but to honor the body that's carried you this far. Make the appointment you've been putting off. Take the test. Ask the question. Not because something's wrong, but because you want to catch it while there's still time to make it right. And don't do it alone. Ask someone to walk with you. Cook a meal together. Healing happens faster when it's shared. You don't need to become a new person. You just need to care for the one you already are. And the earlier you begin, the longer you get to enjoy the life you still have left. Regret number 5. Letting the world decide who they should be. Some people wake up at 70 and realize they've lived a life full of roles, but never truly found their identity. They were the good daughter, the dependable husband, the steady worker, the obedient child, the person everyone could count on, but who rarely had space to ask themselves, what do I actually want? I remember an 81-year-old woman who once told me, I never chose anything. Life just happened to me. She said it like a confession, not bitter, not angry. Just tired. Tired from years of being what everyone needed, without ever stopping to ask what she needed. She raised 3 kids, gave them everything, supported her husband through job loss, illness, and decisions she never got to make, kept the house clean, cooked dinner on time, went to church every Sunday, dressed proper and smiling. But when the house got quiet, when the kids moved out, when her husband passed, and the routines no longer held her life together, she sat at the kitchen table and realized she didn't know who she was without someone else needing her. She told me, I've been everyone else's person, but I forgot to become mine. That sentence haunted me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar. How many of us live our lives on autopilot, doing what's expected, playing the role, being who we were told to be, while the person inside quietly fades into the background? Her words stayed with me, not because they were unique, but because I've heard versions of them again and again. People who spent decades becoming what was expected of them: a good spouse, a dependable parent, a quiet caregiver. And somewhere along the way, they forgot to become themselves. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you've looked in the mirror and thought, who am I when no one else is looking? Who would I be if I stopped trying to be everything for everyone? Those are hard questions, but they're not too late to ask. Advice: you don't have to reinvent your life, but you do have permission to reclaim it. Ask yourself, what do I like? What gives me peace? What have I always wanted to try but never gave myself permission to do? Start there. Read a book no one recommended. Wear a color you've always loved. Learn something new, not for a certificate or approval, but for you. It's never too late to meet the version of yourself that's been waiting patiently in the background, because you weren't just made to serve roles. You were made to live a story, and it's still being written. So let's go over those 5 regrets one more time, slowly. Number 1, waiting too long to forgive, because the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. Number 2, choosing safety over purpose, because a life without risk is often a life without meaning. Number 3, not saying what needed to be said, because words left unspoken echo louder than the ones we regret. Number 4, neglecting your health when you had the chance, because your body remembers everything, and eventually it speaks back. And number 5, letting the world decide who you should be, because you were made for more than just roles. You were made to be you. But here's the beautiful part. These don't have to be your regrets. As long as you're breathing, you're still becoming. As long as there's today, there's still time. So don't waste it looking back in shame. Look forward in truth, and take even one step toward the life your soul's been asking for. We all carry something. A few missed chances. A few things we'd do differently if we had the time back. But maybe wisdom isn't about having no regrets. Maybe it's about letting those regrets teach you, so you don't repeat them. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're still here. And that means you still have a say in how the story ends. Which of these regrets spoke to you the most? Leave a comment and let me know, because your story matters here. If this video made you think about your own life a little differently, give it a thumbs up. And if you know someone who needs this kind of quiet truth, send it to them. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Nonstop Wisdom. Not just for more videos, but for more moments like this, where it's okay to slow down, look back, and gently choose what comes next.